So what's actually going to break in the business if we just continue to use Google Sheets and we never buy a proper CRM like Salesforce? Now, there's a lot of different periods within a tech business that you should consider something like Google Sheets and then move into more of a proper CRM like Salesforce. And I want to break that down for you. So our first initial setup, I would say $0 to $1 million. You're really just trying to sell stuff, advertise, make sure people know who you are and get your name out there. It's also a lot of testing during this phase. So does this business process work? Do we want to run sales like this? Do we want to run marketing like that? So you're doing a lot of testing too. And during that time, you want to be using your money usually for sales and marketing to get yourself out there and make money, make the business actually viable. You don't really want to be spending a ton of money on tools that are going to be soaking things up that are a good, better, best. 0 to 1 million, I would say better is a CRM. Good right now is going to be something like Google Sheets. So totally proper to use that. Now, as we move into the 2 to 3 million, 3 million for sure, you should definitely be using a proper CRM, whatever choice that is for you. Most people will tend to just go to the one that they're going to use forever, which is Salesforce. And at that point, that's what you should migrate everything that you used Google Sheets for into Salesforce. It does essentially the same thing. So most people use their Google Sheets like this for like deals. So, hey, we're going to sell this thing, or here's a lead that came in, here's their info that we have, or a contact of maybe someone that's like the champion or the primary decision maker on the account. Those are other people outside of the deal flow that we need to keep track of. You'll keep that inside of Google Sheets. Everybody has edit access. It's hard to understand who edited what last. It's hard to understand if somebody really is going to be owning something, if they're going to be calling someone next Tuesday, or if that's somebody else's job. So you start to have these things break as you get bigger and bigger because it's just hard to sustain. Now, at a low volume over here, though, it really is viable for you to do. Again, 0 to 1 million, pretty easy to do. You usually have a pretty small team. Let's say it's 10 people or less. Everybody kind of knows everything. Even if I'm not the sales guy, I'm marketing, I'm probably going to know everything that Kevin does because we're just a small team. We're all kind of in meetings together. We're all talking to each other. It's a tight-knit family at that point. I probably know what to do. So humans fill the gaps. We do a lot of manual processes during the 0 to 1 million, and it just works out. So that's going to continue to work until you start getting bigger with more teammates and you start making more money to where you hire more people to do these processes. That's hard to remember all the things that should be happening. Okay, so first signs of trouble that you'll use for a signal are questions that people start asking on your team. So if you hear any of these 4 questions, who owns this? Did anyone follow up? Why don't these numbers match? I thought you were handling that. If you hear any of those 4, those are 4 common questions that you'll start to hear in company meetings or as you follow up with people or check in with people during your one-on-ones. That is a sign to say, hey, we've outgrown this, right? We now have more people on the team. This is really hard to understand who did what last. And we're just losing money at this point. Because if we spent all this time and effort to get something into the marketing funnel and then someone asked one of these questions, that just means we lost the lead, right? That means that we're probably not going to close that person. They haven't been getting the attention that we said that we would give them to explain our product, explain our service to them. So nothing's technically broken at this stage, but everything feels really fragile. It feels like if someone takes an extended vacation or they're sick or PTO, we're really in a bad situation here because we don't really have proper systems set up to scale the company. So your first break is the ownership one. In Google Sheets, you have a lot of this ownership that lives in people's heads or Slack threads, or they assume things or make guesses at who should own what. But sometimes it's a mix of all 3, or it can be all 3 that are happening in your business. Really at scale, the leads are going to get worked twice. They may not get worked at all because someone assumes that the other person was going to work it, and they get dropped during handoff. So if we have marketing that does a webinar for us as an example, and they say so-and-so is interested, I'm going to assign that to Kevin. And then Kevin gets sick that next day. Let's say it's a Friday. He comes back after the weekend. He's going to be totally forgotten about the person that you just assigned to them. He may not follow up with them at all. So that's an example here of how this stuff gets really fragile. And we really just don't understand how we hold people accountable from a leadership standpoint because it's unclear at times who's really supposed to be doing what. So you're kind of coming down on the team as a whole, and you can't really hold individuals accountable for the actions that they're taking. So sales will lose trust first on this first break. Break number 2 is where we see things in that handoff, like the webinar example I just used. You start relying on memory. So marketing generates interest. They do something like a paid ad or a webinar or go to a trade show, whatever. They get interest. Number 2 is somebody is supposed to then remember to assign that to the proper sales rep. I went to a trade show. They talked about this they talked about this specific problem, or they're in this specific area. That means it needs to go to this person on the sales team. Somebody in particular has to remember that process right here. Sales eventually will follow up with this person, but again, this is pretty slow, and we really have a lot of key man risk here, where if this person leaves or this person gets fired or again gets sick, PTO, whatever, we're not going to have this handoff happening very smoothly, and it really affects the deal flow you're going to have. So this only works when one specific person is paying attention. This person in the middle in particular, number 2, they really have to be on the ball doing this all the time. And as you increase your lead flow from, a couple leads maybe a day to 30, 40, 50 leads a day that are coming from a bunch of different channels, Facebook and Instagram and webinars and trade shows and all these kind of things, referrals, it's going to be hard for this person to keep up with that volume. They're really not going to have a job other than taking something from an email inbox and assigning that over to a sales rep and following up with them. So memory is not a great way to scale out the company. You need a system to do that. You need an automated system at best to do that for you. Break number 3 is going to be data stops being trusted. Okay. So now we have a number inside of Google Sheets. When leadership looks at it, you probably have someone else on the team that's an Excel whiz, and they have their own personal Excel sheet with formulas and pivot tables, and they're running numbers over there. And then you probably have something different inside of like your QuickBooks or whatever system you use for your sales to run things, Stripe, whatever. So now at this point, you have 3 different places that have numbers that are pertaining to your business, and they all say something different. It's going to make it really hard for leadership to trust what to do. And so what do? They start asking this question, which is which number is right? And that eventually leads them over to this side, which is no one is confident in the numbers that you're seeing, and decisions are going to slow down. What happens when those 2 things happen in the business? If you don't have confidence, you start to have a lack of innovation. People feel timid. They don't want to take risks. They feel like their job is at stake if they do something too crazy. So they just start doing what is minimally required of them. They don't want to move fast. They want to move slow. They kind of start becoming a recluse, versus at this startup stage in your business, especially tech, you want to be blowing up. You want to be doing everything possible to be able to get your name out there and sell stuff. And this kind of has the opposite effect. If nobody feels confident in what they can do, it's going to be really hard for you to have that effect in the business. Slow decisions, I would say, equal a dying company. Really, you're just getting outpaced by your competition. They're going to continue to innovate. They're going to continue to take up the market share that you have. And it really makes it hard for you to get past that hump. Like I said, that 0 to a million might feel really tough in the beginning if you don't have these people coming in, making decisions quickly about what the business should be doing. All right, so the real risk. This is, I would say, the most important part of the entire slides that I have right now. The biggest risk isn't inefficiency. It's that you stop seeing the problems early. All right, so those things I'm mentioning, that's all happening in the weeds. And I kind of find those out as I've worked with companies, because it's my job to do a lot of discovery, sit down with these people, understand the business process, understand what we can automate, understand how Salesforce should be built and the proper CRM that you just bought should be built. And so I understand that when I talk to these people, I get in the weeds and I hear these problems. But this isn't really something somebody comes to the leader and tells them is an issue. Like I said, they start saying stuff, but if you don't understand that those are signals to say that, hey, we've really outgrown Google Sheets and we need to go into a proper CRM, you're not going to know these are issues. It's going to be really hard for you to have that visibility. All right. So that's going to lead you to missed follow-ups, which equals churn. This is both internally and externally. If you have salespeople that are missing follow-ups and they're not making money, you either got to fire them because you don't feel like they can hit quota, or they're going to quit because they can't make any money. So internally it stinks. And then externally, your customers are going to leave because you don't feel like they're getting served. They're not getting delivered the proper stuff that you said that they would from your product or service. So churn starts to happen at a higher rate. Bad handoff. So again, that automated process from marketing to sales, as an example, we have a lot of that bad handoff, bad communication. You're going to have a lot more lost deals or people that just never get followed up on. So we essentially spent a bunch of money to say this person was interested, and then we never did anything with it. And then the last one is poor data, which equals bad decisions. So this is more leadership at this point, but because you have three different versions of the truth, Excel, Google Sheets, and QuickBooks, let's say, it's going to make it hard for leadership to make better decisions about hiring people, what we should spend our money on, what kind of marketing channels are giving us the most leads and converting the most people for our product or our service. So they're just going to move a lot slower, and it makes it hard for you to get into a high growth stage when you are just moving so slowly as far as leadership goes. So by the time that you're going to fill all of this, it's going to be pretty expensive when you look at the bottom line of how much it's costing you. All right. So that's the biggest piece of this. So why Salesforce then becomes part of the conversation? Why do people then move into this as a proper CRM? One caveat that I don't have in here, 90% of Fortune 500 companies use Salesforce. It has the most customization, the largest market share, by far the best community out there for people like me that are going to be building on it. So a lot of people just kind of skip through those starter ones like HubSpot or Zoho or something like that, and they'll just go right to Salesforce because eventually they see in their future, hey, if we keep growing, we're probably just going to be on Salesforce. So we might as well just start doing it now versus go through a migration from Google Sheets to HubSpot and then HubSpot to Salesforce. All right. So that's a lot of the reason why people just choose Salesforce first. If that's not you and you go into something else like HubSpot first, still works, still fine. The most important part is going from a sheet to a proper CRM. So this is usually the moment when people start saying things like this. We need clear ownership, like I mentioned. We need automation instead of reminders. And we need a proper CRM, or we need a real system that's going to track all these data points that we need to know inside of the business versus us coming up with crazy ways inside of a Google Sheet to try to track this. So Salesforce should not feel complex. It should just feel like it has the right data points for the right information that you care to track. Contacts has a place that it lives. Deals have a place that it lives. Your leads are going to have a place where it lives. All your cases that come in for customer support are going to have a place that it lives. So all that stuff is just nicely tucked away inside of Salesforce in the proper place, easy to find, easy to pull reports on. So it shouldn't feel complex. It should feel right for you as the business grows. So it's really about replacing memory that we talked about, all this manual stuff you're trying to do, with systems instead that are going to be automated. Big misconception between these things. Most teams are going to start thinking Salesforce is going to fix this. So they have all these bad business processes that they've developed from that 0 to 3 million, let's say, and Google Sheets maybe didn't help with that. And then they think, okay, I just buy this tool and it just snap of the fingers is going to fix all these problems that I have. Salesforce is just a better version of something like Google Sheets. It has more places, more organization to put data, but by default, it doesn't come with like instructions. It's not going to tell you exactly how you need to set it up for your business. That's why people like me exist. People like me come in and we have experience working with people in your industry or with your type of business, and we can recommend and suggest ways that you should build it so that it works properly. Okay. So don't go into this idea that, hey, yep, this guy watched this video. He told me we need a proper CRM. I'm going to do it. And then boom, our business is just going to be much better. No, it is going to be better, but you still need somebody to be able to build this out. You need to have good business processes that work. You got to still think through those things. It's just going to make it easier to manage your business as you keep growing. Okay. So bad processes equal fast bad processes. If you just move this into Salesforce and it's more automated systems, it just shows you that bad process that you had, and it's just going to do it more often and quicker because it's all automated. So good process is really what we should focus on with scalable clarity. So when you hire someone like myself, a consultant, to come in, my team and I would sit down with you. We have a Salesforce architect. We do discovery, which would include us sitting down to say, what tools do you use? What does your business do to get someone from interested to buying your product? And then we would suggest ways based on what we've seen work with other tech companies in your industry of how they're building theirs so that you could do something similar and have something that works proper for your business as you keep growing from 3 million to 100 million. Okay, so it's not going to fix the problems. It's just going to amplify whatever design that you currently have within the business. So the takeaway here of what I would say, if you are considering moving away from Google Sheets, you think it's been far too long, you're past that 3 million mark, you got to get rid of it. The takeaway here is if you're on HubSpot or Google Sheets, primarily Google Sheets that we talked about in this video, this is not going to happen overnight, okay? So you're going to have some leeway here of how long this takes from you growing from $0 to around that 3 million that I'm talking about. It is going to start happening though through those questions, like we said: unclear ownership, fragile systems or handoffs, and untrusted data by the leadership team. If those three things are happening, I would say it's a really good signal for your company to say, maybe we should move into Salesforce at this point. But remember, at scale, systems are going to beat memory every single time. So if we have a bunch of manual processes happening, of course, a system that's automated, that's going to work every single day, it never takes a day off, it never gets sick, it's never going to be on PTO, that's always going to beat somebody, your competition, especially if you think of them, if they're doing it manually, right? If we can automate a system and make it do its thing every single time that you want it to trigger, it's going to be way easier to scale your business as you move forward. So if this is you, if this described everything that you're thinking and you're like, man, this is exactly what we hate about our company right now, there is a link in the description. We'll see if we're a good fit for you as your Salesforce consultants, if you do want us to come in and help you with this. And if so, like I mentioned, we'll have an architect, we'll sit down, we'll do some discovery, we'll figure out what is best for your company based on tech companies we've worked with. And then we can get started designing this, building it out for you to make that easier and not make it feel like such a huge lift. This is also a very hard time when you move from Google Sheets to Salesforce if you don't have a partner, because it's going to be a whole new thing that you got to learn. And it's just a massive rabbit hole what Salesforce is. Again, so there's people like me out there that are certified. We've spent our whole careers just building stuff in Salesforce. So again, if that's you, click the link below. We'll see if we're a good fit and look forward to speaking with you guys soon if it is.